At the start of 2020, we bought our boat almost to the day that Europe went into lockdown. The timing could not have been worse. Our new boat was in Spain while we were locked down in Belgium for 4 months. That's right, Belgium. I'll temper my enthusiasm. This was our first boat. We hadn't really sailed much and we'd certainly never lived aboard. Talk then started about a global recession and I started thinking about what would be the worst case scenario. What if we hated sailing? What if we hated living aboard? What if something unexpected happened and we needed to sell the boat in a hurry? This all led to the big question: how much of my boat's value had been lost thanks to the pandemic? In this episode, we'll explore the boat market since the crisis hit and whether or not now is the right time to buy a boat. Rather than take my word for it, we've called upon a crack team of salty sailors and experts to give their insights from their perspective too.
So if you're interested in buying a boat, selling a boat, or the boat market in general, then this episode is for you.
Join us in this special episode of Sailing Talia, should you buy a boat in 2021. The boat market's pretty diverse and can alter slightly between regions around the world. In this episode, we'll focus on the sailing yacht market based on insights and experiences from around the Mediterranean. According to a report by researchandmarkets.com, despite the economic impact of COVID-19, the global leisure boat market's expected to reach a whopping $55 billion between now and 2027. That's an expansion of almost 5% in the times of a global recession. Now let's get the lowdown from people who have actually gone through the process of buying since the pandemic began, to get a real sense of the reality on the ground. So after a windy start to the day, here I am on board the beautiful boat Grace with Jonathan and Kim, locally known here in the Marina de Ragusa as the Oracle of the Marina. Jonathan and Kim have great insight to share with us because they've gone through the process of both selling and buying a boat in the last 12 months. So maybe if you could just have a quick introduction.
Yeah, sure. And we've owned a boat this is our 4th full year we've completed. We bought our first boat in 2017 and we purchased this boat here in the marina last year. During COVID, we decided we needed a little bit more room. So I spotted a larger boat and fell in love with it. So that was it, we had to go for it.
How long have you been sailing for?
Well, we started sailing 10 years ago, just doing flotillas.
Okay.
We did a couple of charters after that, didn't we? And then we fell for the idea we want to live on a boat. So we retired first, bought one, and then wound up here, which has been our winter base now for 4 years. And we're coming back next winter for one more last shot at it.
How has the pandemic sort of impacted your life, would you say?
Well, it made a great difference to us last year when we found we were tied down.
The lockdown was very strict last year in March, April time.
We weren't allowed off the boat, we could exercise on the pontoon only.
And as I understand, you got stuck here in Ragusa for longer than expected.
Yeah.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to travel anywhere outside Italy.
Right.
So going to Greece or any of those destinations was out of the question until July.
It was July, I think the 14th of July we were allowed to sort of make a move. So we knew it was going to be a long summer and saw this boat, decided it was a much better option for us, and we decided we'd make a go for it because we thought, well, we could finish up spending the whole year here stuck in the marina. At least it gives us something to do, because of course when you buy a boat there's always jobs to do, and we just finished the last one, so it made sense to sell it.
So maybe a little bit more about that. So how did you find the sale process of your last boat?
Well, we were very fortunate. Our son is a broker.
Aha.
So we were very, very fortunate. His firm that he works for are wonderful, and they allowed him to work in his own time for free. So we were very lucky. So we did get great exposure on the boat, and the day after it was actually launched and hit all the major yachting websites out there where you can buy a yacht, it hit them on the Saturday evening, and on the Sunday morning we were actually going for a final sale. to Siracusa. And as we were leaving the port here, we had a telephone call from our son. I've got you somebody who's very, very interested in the boat.
Right.
So as quick as that.
So within 24 hours you had an offer, or you had
We had somebody wanting to
inquiry.
come and see it, a very serious inquiry, which was very good. We arrived at Siracusa because, funnily enough, we wanted a last sail and we had jobs to complete, and there is very good chandlers there, and we wanted to go for a final sail in Tickety-Boo. So off we went and got the jobs done, and whilst we were there somebody else was interested and wanted a video tour. We
Right.
gave them a video tour and they agreed to buy it, and the very next day they sent the deposit.
Incredible.
Incredible. I think the thing that happened last year was so many people realised what it was like to be stuck on land
Right.
or stuck at home. Our son usually, the firm he works for, usually has about 180 boats for sale
Right.
on their website. They had 3.
Wow.
They all sold out. They couldn't get boats, second-hand boats to sell. They couldn't keep up.
What do you think's driving this trend?
I think it was the pandemic and the realisation for many people that holidaying was never going to be the same again.
Right.
So perhaps that by buying something in a foreign country in the sunshine was going to be a good step,
Yeah.
so that, you know, they're going to get a holiday if they can get out there and make them longer, enjoy the time together. Even in the UK, sales were far higher than were expected, and now a new boat lead time is next September. So if you order a new boat now, at the moment the lead time is September. It went crazy last year.
So what about when you were given the green light to be able to leave and sail around last year? And sure, it was a shorter cruising season than usual, but how did you find out there sailing around when the lockdown was eased?
It was a little strange, but
We went to the Ionian, which is normally a very busy area.
Yep.
It was quite busy, but I don't think it was as busy as you would normally see.
not perhaps as normally see. The very most popular places were crazy as usual, but
Okay.
a lot of the places were nowhere near as busy as usual, particularly in the month of, well, it was the 1st of August we arrived, so the first couple of weeks it did seem quieter. By
Okay.
the time we were ready to leave, sort of 3rd week in September, it was again going quiet, but in between we did see an awful lot of boats about. So a lot of people did get out to the boats and have a couple of months.
What have you learnt about the boat market over the last 12 months?
It's really shocked us, because of course we've heard that everybody says the best days of your life are the day you buy a boat and the day you sell a boat, because you can't wait to get rid of it. Well, I think that changed last year for an awful lot of people. We did find out pretty soon that if the boat was priced sensibly, it sold instantly.
Right.
We do know a couple of people who were holding on for price and they still have their boats. So it is, you know, it is very much, you still have to be sensible about it. I don't think people are going to make any money on boats, because that's never been possible. But I don't think an awful lot of money is going to be lost over the next few years in that investment, because there is still the interest out there, and I think it is still going to grow.
Should people buy boats next year?
Yes, I think
I think the challenge is finding one.
I think the challenge is going to be finding
We know
one.
a couple who've sold the boat. They used to be based here,
Right.
and they're still looking for a replacement.
Wow. So it sounds like the market is pretty slim pickings out there.
It is slim pickings, and it's been very, very buoyant, and I don't see a downturn. And more importantly, obviously, we're in the second-hand market, but our son, who is in the new market as well as second-hand, it's really picked up pace in the new market as well.
Right.
So, yeah, people are still very keen to buy boats at the moment.
Sounds like it. Sounds like it. Well, thank you very, very much for your
That's
time.
an absolute pleasure.
And it's great to have neighbours like these guys when you're in the marina as first-time cruisers. So every question that I've got regarding fixing the engine, gel coat repair, the Oracle is here for our benefit. So we're very, very lucky to have these guys as neighbours. Thanks a lot, guys.
No worries.
My pleasure.
This conversation got me curious about the new boat market and how the pandemic had impacted this end of the market. So I met with a fellow Aussie and Marina de Ragusa liveaboard on his beautiful new Beneteau Oceanus 46.1, Coolbadi.
I retired in July of last year in Australia, and then I was planning to come over in April, but when the pandemic hit, the borders shut on both ends, so we stayed in Australia. The boat stayed on the Hard in Grisson in France. It sat there until I think mid-July when we finally got the clearance to come. We got there, and then the boat started to be put together, not without its problems, and eventually got it in the water and got away mid-August. That rushed us a little because we'd expected to spend the whole of the summer coming down to here. We'd always planned to settle somewhere in southern Sicily, and
For the winter or
for the winter,
Yep.
yeah. We'd sort of been advised against trying to sail, and with a new boat and weather, the Mediterranean's not as docile as you believe it can be.
Yeah, we've learned that the hard way.
Yeah,
as well.
I think all of us as well. So, and getting to crew, getting used to the boat. So we're a bit more rushed, and we had a few problems with the fuel system on the boat. New boats aren't without faults, as we've realised pretty quickly.
So that's interesting. So we've been reading that because of the pandemic, because manufacturers were forced to shut down for long parts of the beginning of 2020, that they were really rushed. And do you think that may have had an influence on some of the problems that you had?
I think so. I think near the time of shutdown, which was when our boat was being delivered, I think they were either short of staff or rushing to get orders done before the inevitable shutdown.
Mm-hmm. How did you find the pandemic hit your life?
Well, I work for an airline, so it hit pretty violently in about April. Luckily, I was retiring then anyway, so I was one of the lucky ones who actually had a planned retirement. Most of my friends have either retired or totally stopped flying and may not fly for another year or two until Australia starts to open up its borders.
What have you learned about the boat market this past year?
Well, I was surprised. I thought probably like most people it would be a buyer's market, people selling boats to stay afloat, and again, sorry the pun. I think the fact that you can isolate as much as you like on a boat, which if you want to leave and sail into a bay and stay there, it's probably not many safer spots to be. So, and I think all the lockdowns and the uncertainty, it's like international travels. You just don't know where you're going to end up and how you're going to get home. So at the end of the day, you can always get your boat and sail.
We call it the ultimate form of self-isolation.
It can be, totally, yeah.
Grant, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And we look forward to hearing more about your adventures on board Coolbardie once you ship out of here at the end of winter. And
it sounds like we're all going the same direction.
I think so. Chances are we'll bump into each other in an anchorage somewhere or other.
No, we will.
Sunny spot in Greece or Croatia, who knows. Thanks a lot. Cheers, Grant.
Thanks.
Of course, a review of the boat market wouldn't be complete without speaking with an expert broker. And who better than our friend Adam Sutton from Michael Schmidt & Partner in the UK. So we're now joined by Adam Sutton, who is an expert broker out of the UK. So Adam is from Michael Schmidt & Partner, and maybe you can give us a bit of insight as to what you do there.
I look after brokerage boats, selling boats that come in to us. So that's boats who've already got an owner. We are basically like an estate agent, and we then hopefully match people up with buying a boat from the vendor to the purchaser. Okay. We also sell brand new boats as well, so that's direct from the factory to the customer.
Rightio. And so, Adam, you've got a bit of a background in sailing yourself as well, don't you?
Yes, I do. I used to dinghy sail and then went into flotillas and then started managing an activity hotel and about 60 charter yachts throughout Turkey. And then went on to super yacht sailing as well.
Wow, fantastic. Maybe in the context of what we're talking about today, if you could give us a bit of an idea of how the pandemic impacted your life.
Yeah, really, work-wise, it changed quite a bit. Obviously, we were an office of 8 people and we're now all working from home. We've been in and out of the office a few times. I'm lucky I only work a mile away from the office, but still, It's very bizarre not going down there anymore. We're still managing to do boat viewings at times when the government allows. Otherwise, we're doing them now through 360-degree cameras, which are quite cheap these days to buy.
Oh, wow.
We put them on boats. People can look around the interior at their own leisure. Doing video tours, walking around, and then also FaceTime, Skype calls, Zoom calls, talking to people to show them around boats as well. And that's really how our work's been changed the most. So
Right.
people aren't generally visiting the boat physically as much as they used to.
Yeah, so I suppose it's really turned it on its head, right, with using technology to view boats as opposed to back in the old days, normal days, physically going and seeing boats. What other ways would you say the pandemic's really impacted the boat market?
It's very bizarre how it's changed, to be honest. So the first thing, going on that from previous amount of FaceTime, the video calls, people are now buying boats, especially brokerage boats, used boats, without actually laying eyes on it or stepping foot on it. I know of one that was in your marina that I was involved with last year that we sold, and the couple who bought that, the first time they stepped on board was with their suitcases when they sailed it off.
Incredible.
It is incredible, and it is really bizarre. How it's changed, people are keen to buy boats at the moment. It's been happening since last February and March when all this kind of started. A lot to do with that people can't go on holidays. Think about a typical family of four, maybe. If they had a couple of holidays a year, that can quickly add up to 20, 30,000 a year. So putting a used boat, sometimes you can get a nice boat for maybe 45, 50,000. It soon starts catching up on those expensive holidays to the Caribbean or maybe five-star hotel. And then, of course, you've got that bit of isolation side of it as well. How it's affected it, people are, again, ringing up, inquiring about boats, and they are actually putting offers in without seeing the boat, as I mentioned, actually in person. Often they're putting offers in that are quite close to their asking price if boat has been priced correctly in the first place.
What would you say surprised you most about the pandemic?
Is that actually inquiries increased. The fact that inquiries increased and the fact there were less boats to sell. So those, so lots of people who've got the boats are actually not wanting to let them go. Where usually they'd have quite good turnover of people bringing boats in, wanting to sell them. That is literally drying up, and worldwide there's quite a shortage on boats to sell. That's also being coupled up as well and driven from the new boat side is the fact that the factories, so usually somebody at this time of year, I sell Hansers and Dahlers, a German brand, and usually we'll be looking at 6 to 7 months from ordering to handover, and that could be handover in the Med somewhere, could be in the UK, could be more or less anywhere in the world. And now we're looking at 9 months just for the build time at the factory. And that is including most other brands as well, such as Beneteau, Bavaria, what we're hearing from them as well. So the shortage and lead times for new boats is also then having an impact on used boats.
Is it true that this delay comes from the fact that that a lot of boat manufacturers were actually having to close down and stop operations altogether at the early part of last year?
Actually, that is a very good point. And actually, it's partly is and partly isn't. So again, I'm not going to say too much about certain manufacturers. But what I will say is that, for instance, Hansa, which I do know, of course, inside out what happened at their factory, they only closed for 1 week due to COVID. They were very strict very early on, but they have had, I think their order book's about 180% higher than last year.
Wow.
So they have huge order uptakes. And I know a lot of the other brands have got the same as well. Yes, there's two factors. Yes, there's a combination that things have got a little slower. For a lot, because maybe Italy closed down where some parts were coming from for boats and things like that. But the uptake of orders is actually the main driving factor behind it all.
So what do you think's driving this uptake in orders?
I think it's literally people are looking for new ways to spend the time. There's been a lot of reflection in people's lives. How do they want to spend the time? Life is short. Why put something off for tomorrow that you could do today? Especially when a lot of people are spending a lot more time with families, realising they're missing out on certain events, or unfortunately other ones maybe no longer with us, and it makes you think back a bit more about what you really should be doing with your life, what you want to be doing, why put off a dream for another day that you could do today?
Absolutely. No, it makes perfect sense. You have a good angle here in so much as you're based in the UK. Given that you're based there, could you give us some insight into how maybe Brexit has impacted the boat market?
If you want to have a boat in the UK, we've now lost more or less the boats that are in Europe to bring here, because there will be duties to pay and most likely VAT to pay on used boats. New boats, it isn't an issue at all, because you still pay the VAT when the boat gets here, as you would anyway, and there aren't any import duties. So that's quite simple. What it does mean is, as a UK citizen, that we could now take a boat into the EU without paying VAT on it. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, you could buy a boat in Turkey that might be tax not paid, which you see a lot of, and then you can now sail it into the EU for up to 18 months without any issues. Yes, you need to take it out of the EU after 18 months, but you can either nip back to Turkey, Tunisia, Montenegro, Gibraltar, Channel Islands, or if you're in the Baltic, go to Norway. Many, many options, but it depends on the actual European country that you come from. So, for instance, France and Spain are quite strict with that you have to go to another country. Italy, at the moment of last time, this does constantly change. Italy, last time, you only had to go offshore, take a photo of your chart plotter in a newspaper, and you could go back in and restart your 18-month clock.
Okay.
So, but different countries do. So, if someone's watching this later on, that could have changed. So, do check again.
Err on the side of caution. Fair enough.
Always err on the side of caution to get good advice from somebody who does know at the time.
Looking now at 2021, how do you see the boat market developing this year?
I think it's actually going to be just as busy, if not busier, than last year. I think it might get slower for a lot of brokers, because I think there's going to be less boats coming onto the market to sell. So this time last year, we had here in Hamble, we had about 35, 40 boats ashore that were for sale. I think now we are down to 1 or 2. So we don't have that stock already. Well, I say stock, they're not ours, of course, but we don't have that those listings already in place. Those listings are drying up now, so it's less and less. And that's, same again for most brokers everywhere, all experiencing the same. And that's across the world as well, even in the US. And places like that are seeing the same.
And to the big question, should people buy a boat this year in 2021?
I think if you want to, again, going back to earlier, why put something off for another day that you could do today? I think the biggest factor for anybody at the moment buying a boat, forgetting financial sides or anything like that, is got to be the consideration of travel restrictions.
Right.
Where do you want to have? Where is the boat? Are you made to get to it? Are you made to use it? They are going to be the biggest restrictions this year with should you buy a boat or not, rather than the market. Yes, if you're looking at boats, don't expect to be putting an offer in quite a long way below the asking price unless the boat is overpriced, because boats are achieving that. It's amazing how many phone calls we still get, people inquiring about boats and saying it must be a buyer's market at the moment, they must be keen to sell, and it's like, actually it's not. It's completely the reverse.
I think people would be forgiven for thinking that, though, right? The fact we're in a global recession, you're expecting prices on the majority of things in a supply and demand dynamic market to have dropped, and it's just bizarre that in the boat market it's actually sounding almost like the opposite.
It is, and it's the same in the caravan and motorhome industry as well, from what we believe. So again, which is, of course, we all like to think we're quite different on yachts to others, but really motorhome caravans are very similar in the aspects that you take it with you and you are more having your own self-isolation as such, your own social distancing with you.
Yeah, it sounds like people just want to get off grid, disconnect. We've all been stuck at home in lockdown for months and months on end. I understand why people want to just disconnect, right?
Exactly. You need to get away from it all. And again, with the technology, what we have learned this year is that a lot more people can work from home and work remotely. And as you're sat in the marina there, quite a distance from I am here in the UK, talking absolutely fine, and more businesses happening like this now. So I think a lot more people are looking for maybe boats as well with maybe a good chart table area or somewhere where they can actually set up their own little office.
Absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. Well, Adam, thank you very, very much for your time then this afternoon. We really, really appreciate the opportunity to have a chat with you, and thank you for sharing your expert insights. And who knows, maybe we'll see you floating around in the Mediterranean here at some stage over the next year.
You never know, as long as Boris Johnson will be okay.
Fantastic. Alrighty, thanks a lot, Adam. Bye for now.
Cheers, thank you.
So why did we make this episode? Well, I was struck by the contrast between a global recession and a buoyant, if not booming, boat market. As to the question of my boat's value during this crazy period, well, I'm under no illusion it's a depreciating asset, but at the same time I'm not concerned anymore about the value toppling over. Now to the main question. Should you buy a boat in 2021? Let's look at this through two lenses. The economic perspective and lifestyle. Like any market, the boat market's driven by supply and demand. Since the crisis, people aren't selling their boats hand over fist on the second-hand market, and new boat sales are delayed considerably because of the factory closures at the beginning of 2020. On the flip side, the demand for escape, freedom, and socially distanced holidays are clearly on the rise, mainly given the fact that the governments had us locked up for so many months before lockdown finished. On top of that, many people shifted from working in an office to working from home, and we all started to realize just how easy it is to work virtually from pretty much anywhere, as long as there's decent Wi-Fi connection. And who wouldn't want to work from an office with a view like this? And that leads to the second perspective, lifestyle. Whether you're new or old to boating, sailing during this crisis has some pros and cons that are unlikely to change this year. Quieter anchorages means more space when anchoring and makes it a little bit easier for newbies to start anchoring. With less traffic, it's a bit easier to get marina spaces. Less tourists when you're visiting all those exotic shores. In terms of the cons, sailing between countries during this period has become a bit of a lottery. You want to hope that by the time you arrive in your destination country that they're accepting foreigners. Otherwise you could find yourself without permission to make landfall, or worse, sent back from where you came from. With a bit of careful planning and paying close attention to local rules, you should be able to avoid this sort of problem. For our part, we wouldn't trade this pretty magical lifestyle for anything, and feel very fortunate to be able to live this way during a very challenging period for so many. So if you're thinking about buying a boat in 2021 as a weekender or to live aboard, our advice is just do it. Don't expect a bargain. Like anything, you get what you pay for, but it will give back in spades.
So before we end today's episode, we wanted to let you know that over the break we launch a website and our Patreon page.
So if you guys are interested to see what life on board Talia is really like behind the scenes, consider becoming a patron.
And head over to sailingtalia.com for more information.
Before we go today, we have to as well say a huge thank you to our first two patrons, Lars Jensen and Roger Hewitt. You guys took us by surprise last week. Thank you so much for becoming our first patrons before we'd even announced that we had a Patreon page. So welcome to Team Talia. We look forward to getting to know you guys better. Thanks for watching, guys. If you're interested to know more about our switch to boat life, hit the subscribe button to ensure you don't miss a single one of our weekly videos. Or click here to binge watch from the beginning. Cheers, legends!